Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. There have been countless accounts of average people claiming to have been taken by extraterrestrials, probed, experimented on, and dropped off for some mysterious purpose. While these stories are often dismissed or ridiculed, some think that visitors from space have made contact this way. I'm not here to debate their testimonies, but instead talk about a crime fighter with his own unexplained experience. Because who better to investigate this kind of thing than the world's greatest detective? I'm taking issue with Batman, the Abduction, where the Dark Knight has a close encounter with strangers from beyond our stars that are not in his phone's contact list. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover sees bats levitated dramatically below what looks like a flying saucer, while the traditional big-eyed alien, often referred to as the Greys, watches. It's their space alien equivalent of watching a lava lamp. I know he's a big seller and all, but did we really need his name twice on this cover? And the outlined one in the back kinda looks like the one from Batman Beyond, even though this came out a year before that show, and it's not quite identical, so perhaps it's just a wacky coincidence. Written by Alan Grant, with art by Norm Brayfogle, James A. Hodgkins, and Blayard Rohanine, sorry if I screwed that up, we begin with Chapter 1, First Encounter. Our hero is driving just outside Gotham, the roads divided by paint and the sound effect of his roaring engine, while narration thrice mentions that it's midnight. Midnight, when honest men are home and evil roams abroad. Midnight, when all the worst nightmares begin. Bruce is constantly paranoid someone's going to start feeding their mogwai right about now. He's after some crooks in gold face masks whose gunfire failed to take out his tires or lights as intended. His certainty that he'll overtake them within a mile is hindered by a notification from his onboard computer of a system failure. Is that why the text goes from all cap to lowercase? Weird program feature, but whatever. The Batmobile stops dead in the road, not even backups responding, even though he made sure everything was operational like every night. Then he's bathed in a yellow light. Oh, the bat shrooms are kicking in! Per his own perfected routine, Alfred is preparing breakfast, with the local news commenting on the heretofore unnamed gang Bats was chasing, and their murder of a guard at a chemical plant. He turns it off just as the promo starts for an interview with a UFO expert, and heads down into the cave as his boss rolls in. Bruce admits to not feeling very well, so he came home early. But Pennyworth cites the time, 6 a.m. He's returned when he typically does. Bats thought he had a slight dizzy spell, and immediately drove back to the cave. But Alfred notes a slight fever and some marks on Bruce that he can't explain. Are you guys talking about his stubble? 'Cause I really can't tell what marks they're talking about. And isn't it more concerning that his eyes are jet black with tiny white pupils? Is he possessed by a demon?
You're Satan, aren't you?
Whatever's wrong, the butler figures he's overworked and needs to catch up on some sleep, so cancels Wayne's appointments for the day. No one would notice if he slept at work, it's Bruce Wayne after all, but snoozing in those office chairs is terrible for your back. We see Batman in a green vortex, so immobile that he can't even blink, and a shadowed figure whose very presence sickens him. As some very pointy objects get closer to his face, he's unable to fight the increasing panic, and his mind becomes overwhelmed with primeval terror. Minty freshness, my one weakness! He springs up in bed, frightened awake. Disturbing nightmares aren't anything new to him, but this one was worse because he doesn't know what caused it. On his next patrol, he swings by a jeweler's that's often open late on Friday nights, like tonight, where he's currently being robbed at knife point. And despite cooperating, opening up the register, one of the goons still plans on slicing him up. I hope criminal HR at least gives him a good talking to. Bats pulls out and restrains one of them, leading the other two to flee, one dropping a flashlight that shines in the Dark Knight's face, triggering a suppressed memory, leading him to miss on his swing and crash through the window. And in case you missed that obvious visual, the Bald Thief's dialogue has missed in extra big bold letters. Salt on the wound is when he finds out that the security footage of this incident would end up winning Gotham's Funniest Home Videos. Presumably the ones that aren't tied to a lamppost get away, and we go to the Batcave, where Bruce has decided, with these nightmares affecting his work and potentially going to get him killed, Alfred will have to hypnotize him to find the cause.
Not scientifically possible!
Yeah, real-world studies have shown hypnotizing someone doesn't really pinpoint genuine memories with greater accuracy, and can in fact create false recollections. But hey, it's probably one of the least preposterous things we've seen in comics. And of course, the hypnosis requires a coin with a bat emblem engraved on it. It's a leftover for when Bruce tried to start a superhero-exclusive economy, but it didn't take. Now he's found a use for one bat dollar, just a few million more in storage to go. Under the trance, he recalls the car mysteriously losing power, a humming sound, and a golden light before he found himself unable to move. On a splash page, a wavy beam has apparently phased him through the windshield and lifted him towards a UFO. In some manner of medical bay, immobilized and struggling not to panic,
Okay, don't panic. Marge, stop panicking!
an alien speaks into his head that they mean him no harm, he's being restrained for his own good while certain data is collected, and there's a sharp but momentary pain as the alien puts a strange tendril device right up his bat schnoz. It was a humiliating experience that left me horrified and violated in ways I've never known before. But on the plus side, my sinuses have never been clearer. Afterwards, the floaty space dude gives the Caped Crusader a walking tour of the ship, because why not? They go to a chamber with several more humans in stasis tubes, some being operated on like he was. It's explained that these genetic experiments are to collect tissue samples in case of catastrophe, to preserve human stock. But Bats feels his host is hiding something, so as he's being escorted out, he tries taking an artifact as proof of the visit, but it's taken from him, because he's not allowed to remember at this time. He's dropped through some sparkly green energy and told not to tell anyone what he's seen. He said he wasn't allowed to remember anyway, so why would he tell anyone? Or is Space Captain Bug-Eyes anticipating this hypnotherapy? He woke up in the Batmobile feeling nauseated, started the car with no problem, and drove home, unaware of the several hours snipped from his memory. While it may seem like tabloid sensationalism to Alfred, Bruce isn't lying, and he was abducted by aliens. Nothing like Clark, John, or other allies in the League, an experience unlike anything he'd been through prior. Alfred goes to make him a hot drink. Right after I shoo the little green men out of the kitchen. Oh, that's hilarious. Ridiculing your boss's / surrogate son's trauma like that. What is wrong with you? This isn't an Elseworld story. It's basically set in the main DC continuity at the time, so this shouldn't sound so outlandish. Maybe it's in regard to some cliched element to this whole thing, and Alfred is a well-known deadpan snarker, but not when Bruce has been so disturbed by something. And remember, he's Batman, and if it's scary to him, it's not something his father figure would joke about, especially since this is someone who has probably ironed Superman's cape on more than one occasion. Moving on to Chapter 2, UFO Con, where the highly protected NASA satellites orbiting the planet are hacked by the Bat computer, downloading all their data in seconds. Some stuff about meteors and similar cosmic goings-on, but nothing about flying saucers. Yeah, but how many invasions from Apocalypse, or Evil Lantern Corps, or space pirates from planet Jackwagon in the Jerkface Galaxy have they missed? And I'm talking just this month. Just saying, there's a reason the Justice League has their own equipment for this kind of thing. Alfred asks Bruce if maybe he's suffering a kind of delusion.
Why, you're the very model of sanity. Oh, by the way, I've pressed your tights and put away your exploding gas balls.
But Master Wayne points out the UFO phenomena has been documented on Earth for nearly all recorded history, showing old drawings and images from his research on the internet. 30,000-year-old cave paintings in France, medieval portraits, a pharaoh and his army back in 3500 BC, seeing circles of fire in broad daylight, biblical prophets Ezekiel and Elijah interacting with chariots of fire, numerous accounts relating to unexplained objects or vehicles in the sky. Sometimes abductions were blamed on demons, elves, angels, but after the turn of the century, people claimed seeing strange single airships or even entire fleets. World War II pilots, regardless of which side they were on, reported being chased by incredibly fast balls of light they called Foo Fighters. They never did settle which song was their best, Walk or Everlong. Some even suggested skin and bones. And even in the last decade of the 20th century, sightings have continued in every country in the world. Not always by individuals, but even by thousands at a time, like in Mexico City. Overall, millions worldwide have claimed to be taken. Whether a delusion or not, there's definitely something going on. Further investigation, however, led to stories about crop circles, moon civilizations, government cover-ups, and conspiracies. It's kind of funny that back in the late 90s, the internet, still in somewhat of its newness, is cited as a great resource for credible information. Yet today, while it can be that, it's often a place for stochastic terrorist losers, grifters, and willfully deceptive, bad-faith actors to exploit people's ignorance, trust, or faith to make easy money pretending to be angry but correct thought leaders or truth-tellers with this performative rage, and then they ask you to buy crummy razors or do-nothing supplements from their parents, all while scaring you away from facts and into a hive mind of fear that whittles away all critical thinking and encouraging violent behavior. Excuse me while I step off my soapbox. Supposing those millions of abductees aren't wrong, why was Batman taken? Or any of them, for that matter? He doesn't know, but will do everything in his bat power to find out.
Except call any of my friends in the JLA who could easily help me find out. Not the alien demigods, not the magic users, not even the literal angel or God's hand of vengeance, who could, if nothing else, clear up that whole chariots of fire thing.
Also, a little funny that this references the famous stone face on Mars that real folks claim is a sign of life having existed there, a couple pages after Bruce mentions his green buddy, the Martian Manhunter. Turns out, before it became uninhabited, that was the Martian equivalent of a Waffle House. But not a very good Waffle House. Anyway, for the first time ever, Gotham Convention Center is hosting a UFO convention, where Wayne goes in disguise because he obviously can't go in the cape, and the rich boy wouldn't want the ridicule from people thinking he'd seen a spacecraft. Even though, again, this is a DCU, but moving on. After being briefly triggered by a couple guys in suits, he listens in on a lecture by the UFO expert mentioned before, Dr. Franklin Selly. He claims aliens have been mucking around with humans for eons, even attributing Constantine's vision of conquering in the name of the cross to extraterrestrial interference. What a fake intellectual trying to take away Jesus' handiwork. Oh, that clears that up nicely. Hey, about that list of names I have, you think you could... You won't strike stupid people with lightning. I haven't won the lottery yet. You won't give me superpowers. How am I supposed to spread your word without the ability to fly, read minds, or shoot lasers out of my hands? Well, sure, when you put it like that, it sounds easy. When asked why these visitors would be doing this, they suddenly run out of time, and the answer will have to wait until the evening lecture. In the meantime, Bruce has an appointment with Selly, under the alias David Jason, which I think might be partially a reference to Jason Todd, but that's neither here nor there. He tells him about his abduction by the Greys, minus the bat elements of course, while the doc serves him some tea. He's met hundreds that had the same experience, and even had several himself, which is why he set up his contact group, so victims could support each other through their trauma. As for why the aliens are doing this, I can provide you 100 theories, most of which I've pitched as episodes for various TV shows. I managed to sell one to South Park. As he mentions medical experiments and tracking implants, Bruce suddenly sees Selly surrounded by strange, swirling shapes. As he echoes the previous suggestion by the alien Bruce met that their goal is to restart humanity when some cosmic event wipes us out, another angrier face melting from him says they're evil, tending to humans like plants, so we can be harvested once fully mature.
Then the only solution is to be immature. We as a species must spend all our time eating junk food, take offense at every imagined slight, reject all evidence that contradicts our biases, and mercilessly harass people online over small typos on their social media.
Even more heads erupt, arguing over the aliens' intentions and origins, that they're time travelers, angels, devils, or invented by the government to scare people into unquestioning obedience. Oh, the places I could go with that one. Bruce recoils, saying his eyes were playing tricks on him, and Sally mentions that hallucinations are common after abductions. After Bruce strongly refuses to be hypnotized, Sully mentions his own abduction when he was a child, but has since learned a way to spy on the Greys, learning their devious ways.
They're already working on a live-action adaptation of The Wild Robot, which is going to be CGI robots and animals anyway. What's even the point? What makes it live-action?
As bonkers as his claim sounds, Sully claims everyone will soon know what he does. Holding Bruce's hand, he takes him astral traveling to look in on the aliens in spirit form, appearing as sparkling golden images of themselves. Is it just me, or are the stand designs in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures getting a lot lazier? They fly into the upper atmosphere to a loitering saucer and go through the ship unnoticed since they're virtually invisible in this form. They see more abductees in a room full of jarred organs, body parts, and one tube full of what look like fetuses, all of which don't appear to be for the good of humanity.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
They're spotted by a reptoid alien working with the Greys, who's got some headgear that can apparently see astral figures, and a weapon that fires blue energy, which I guess could hurt their souls, which is why they make a hasty exit. They return to their bodies, Sully noting how a reptoid associate means the Greys' plans are further along than anticipated. When Bruce asks what their plans may be, the phone rings, and coincidentally the doc says he's got to head to a panel to discuss the religious implications of UFOs. Hey, did you get an invite to that? To be fair, your address isn't exactly on many mail routes. Sully offers to meet with Mr. Jason later, to meet other abductees if he wants, but Bruce has to go, though says he'll be in touch. He dashes out of the convention and into his waiting car, telling Alfred he's more confused than ever, as well as sporting a nasty headache. We go into Chapter 3. Enter the Dragons. Wait, the cool flying lizard-like dragons we're all used to, or the goofy-looking ones from Adventure Time? Bats has caught up with the golden-masked crooks he was chasing at the beginning, dubbed the Chemical Gang. They aren't really pros or fighters, so they fall pretty quickly even when he pulls his punches. When he's about to unmask one, he gets a sharp pain in his noggin, then thinks he sees a group several yards away, and goes to confront what may be more of the gang. But it's 3 identical bald dudes in suits. Man, the men in black are getting really strict with this new dress code. They warned Batman that he wasn't supposed to talk about his experience, and if he disobeys again, his family, parents, and children will be harmed.
This is insane. He has no family.
Oh, I made myself sad.
That'll hit different for readers of the past several years, what with the increased focus on his allies as his family, but back to the story. Pointy Ears grabs the only one that's been speaking and amps up the scary, warning him to explain what's going on, only to be distracted by a figure back where the Chemical Gang is tied up, and the 3 strangers are gone without a trace. As he ignores a resurgence of pain in his head, the figure approaches. Martial artist and actor Bruce Lee. He now prefers to be called the zombie with the dragon tattoo. Not sure if that's actually from one of his films or is a really random and tongue-in-cheek reference to Iron Fist. Anywho, their fight is done really well, Lee blocking several attacks and getting in some good hits on the Dark Knight.
Despite the notable handicap of being dead.
That's when he pulls a Tien Shinhan and replicates into 4 of himself.
Wow, this must be what people mean when they say I'm oversaturated.
Impossible as the situation seems, he does what he can to fight them off, weaponizing his cape, throwing smoke pellets, dodging, parrying, but it only delays his inevitable defeat. The pain is real enough that he seems to pass out for a mere second, finding the 4 Jeet Kune Do masters now replaced with one floating hippie-looking dude, who didn't intend on violence, but Bats didn't seem to want to listen to reason. You're a barefoot dude sitting cross-legged in midair. I think that's enough to give him pause to hear you out. But no, attacking him after he just caught some murderous criminals and encountered some ghost agents. Truly, that speaks to what being reasonable is. The newcomer calls himself the Kook, the sanest man on Earth, allegedly. He claims that aliens have been manipulating mankind since its earliest stages, all for some wicked intent, and if not stopped, it'll lead to mass extinction. He's found something that can alert the world. If it's a mass text, most of us will just ignore it, you know. And wants Batman to help. When the vigilante grasps his head from the surging pain, he finds himself alone again. Later in the cave, he's getting bandaged up, telling Alfred he must have been hallucinating his ordeal, and his injuries might have been psychosomatic, his body producing the consequences of a brawl his mind was tricked into fighting. In a less demeaning bit of humor, Alfred pinches him in case he's dreaming, but Wayne figures the only explanation is that he's been drugged. On to Chapter 4, Alone Again, or Do I Have to Order Takeout for 3 Other People? Bruce draws some blood, which is green for some reason. Is Batman a Vulcan?
I suppose by the transitive property, I too must be Vulcan as a motherfucker.
Yeah, logic.
Has it analyzed and finds a hitherto unknown compound in his system, then spends all day creating an antidote, which he takes. While he's feeling less confused, his headache is worse than ever, so gives himself a Bat CAT scan, revealing a foreign object in his head near his brain. I warned you not to put your mother's antique thimble up your nose, Master Bruce.
Give me a break, kids do that thing all the time.
You are 27, sir. After a quick probing up his nostril, Pennyworth removes what the tabloids would term an alien implant. And this look on Bruce's face? So sheepish and stunned. You don't see that on Batman's mug very often. Elsewhere, Dr. Selly is in a sensory deprivation chamber, astral projecting himself to spy on the aliens once again, as they continue their galactic puppetry of thousands of worlds. Narration attributes his seeing of the truth to a formula that appeared to him a few months ago, one that he'll use to save mankind, and he begins to laugh, which I guess causes his tank to leak purple fluid? Oh no, he's filled it with the blood of the Grimace! You monster! After a series of tests, Bruce still can't figure out what the implant is, intending on taking it to Star Labs later to see if they can find anything. As for the drug he was under, he finds it could only have been created by materials stolen by the chemical gang, and he experienced the same symptoms when meeting Kelly and the kook, suggesting a connection. Now thinking clearly, free of headaches and hallucinations, he hops into his car to find the answers to his many questions. The doctor, meanwhile, has left his tank and gotten dressed to check with a crew of people in black jumpsuits. He claims the aliens are going to coax mankind into extinction via another world war, and this may be their last chance to stop them. His people have costumes, including alien masks, as well as cosmosis sprays that are ready to go. With a UFO event scheduled for midnight, Selly says they dare not fail to save the world. If your plan involves some kind of off-Broadway play, you might just make them want to wipe us out sooner. Batman, angry at being drugged and his mind toyed with, even if pure intentions were allegedly involved, drops in on Selly and his people as they leave the hotel. The UFOologist suddenly hulks out, narration eventually suggesting he's turned into the villain Blockbuster, as he delivers a massive punch and rips a tree from the ground. Having taken the antidote, Bats figures he can't be hallucinating, realizing he can only keep moving as he strikes and dodges, before getting smacked with the plant. After the ordeal over the last several days, as well as his lack of sleep, the Dark Knight's best isn't enough, as the tree is ultimately thrown at his back. At least it's not a strangely naked Bane this time. The Bruiser turns into the kook, allegedly Selly's better half. His projection's a side effect of his cosmosis drug, the same formula which allows him to spy on the aliens. Bats figures these mental powers are what made him believe in his abduction, but Kooky Monster suggests the Greys are real, and he needs cosmosis to warn the planet, so thousands will see the impending UFO that he's going to hallucinate them to see. After his crew swarm bats, they tie him up and take him to the roof of the hotel, ignoring his pleas that Selly has manipulated them through drugs. The guy, who truly loathes violence, then smacks him in the back of the head, knocking him out, and has him shoved into an air vent, anchored to a pipe on the roof. When he awakens, unsure how much time has passed, he begins the arduous process of flexing his wrists to eventually loosen the ropes. Bats preoccupies his mind by trying to find a pattern to this whole case, and if he was drugged, how was there an implant found near his brain? Perhaps cosmosis affects other victims similarly to the kook, and Bruce projected the object with such authority that Alfred could see it as well. He's freed his arms, but now his shoulders get wedged, and because the conscious mind shuts down with no stimuli to engage it, he begins seeing images of various rogues laughing at him, until he's hit with some scalding hot steam.
That cinches it. Worst place to escape, an improvised death trap. 0 stars. Would not be caught here again.
Not sure what the narration means by lack of stimuli to the mind. Is trying to figure out a way to get himself out not stimulating enough? Or is it all the fatigue he's feeling? We go to Chapter 5, Messengers of Deception, and a splash page of UFOCon attendees from around the globe witnessing a flying saucer hovering above them. Ha!
Take that, New York Comic-Con! We have proof of extraterrestrial life, while all you got was Rob Liefeld and a Big Bang Theory panel. Midnight, when all the worst nightmares begin. The one where you're finally alone with your crush and are about to ask them out, but you suddenly can't speak, and when you blink, they've turned into an axe-wielding B. Arthur with murder in her eyes. Batman dislocates his shoulder to unwedge from the steam vent, pulls himself out, pops his limb back into place, and, though sick with pain, calls Gordon. The con-goers realize the flying saucer was actually a prop rigged to a jib, figuring it's a theatrical finale to the convention. But as it's being lowered, Kook has his alien-garbed minions spray the crowd with cosmosis so they can see the truth. In this case, hallucinations of dozens of different spacecraft in the sky above. Batman sees them too, as people begin to panic how Sully was right all along, that the aliens have arrived, but he reasons those vessels are Kook's projections, amplified by anyone affected by his custom drug. He knocks out a goon operating the jib, dropping the fake saucer to the ground, thus disrupting the villains for the moment. With his own nose filters in place, as narration kindly informs us, Bats warns the arriving commissioner about the mist, and to contain the affected citizens until he can provide the antidote. Right now, he has some unfinished business. The Morris account isn't going to triplicate itself! He goes straight for the Kook, who blames him for ruining his mass sighting that would have been globally reported and alerted people to the evil. He accuses our hero of being a mass murderer as he pulls down his shades and uses his psionic abilities again, giving Batman pause. But it's not a long pause, as he's aware of what he's facing. Decking Sully then gives him his antidote to cosmosis. And it's really fast acting, immediately returning the Doctor to his normal form. Is his remedy really that strong, or is the drug really that weak? Pointy Ears demands to know how Sully made him think he'd been taken, but the Doc doesn't know what he's talking about, claiming the Greys are a real threat, and with the convention guests seeing their ships, the world will know about them. Gordon arrives to cuff him, as Bats warns he may not know what he's doing half the time. Make that all the time, and he could become a popular podcaster. The police gather the gassed citizens together as Batman watches above, not surprised when he finds the alien implant that had been in his belt no longer there. Narration cites his uncertainty that even if everything in this caper has been the Kook's machinations, there have still been millions of reported abductions and UFO sightings around the world for a really long time, which Sully couldn't have had anything to do with. He muses what's real and what's been created from the human mind, swinging off as the comic ends with the lament that there are some mysteries even the Batman can't solve. Hey, narrator, keep it down, would you? The last thing I need is for that to get around.
That was Batman the Abduction, and it's a fine story, but perhaps the concept is bigger than the execution. For all the extremes we've seen him go through, especially in recent years, Batman has traditionally been a down-to-earth hero. When it appears he's been taken by space aliens, something that everyday people seriously claim happened to them, it makes sense that he'd try some more traditional methods of sussing things out. Researching, studying, scanning, testing, things ordinary folks might try within their means, though they are not renowned detectives with main character privileges. Bruce doesn't rely on Martian Manhunter's telepathy, for example, or one of his magical allies, since they'd give pretty easy answers, and regular people don't have superheroes on their speed dial, so they might try something like hypnosis to recall memories, though as mentioned, it is not proven effective or reliable. Memories can be affected by our moods, emotions at the time of an experience, and just the mind deciding some details aren't important, and just dismissing them over time, or even filling the gaps with our own imagination. Heck, I remember some alien-related special I watched as a kid, where they had an experiment where different people witnessed a staged UFO-like event, and they each remembered it differently, not only from each other, but what actually happened right in front of them. I kind of got the feeling that Alan Grant became interested in alien abductions at some point, and thought it'd make for an interesting bat tale. That's an assumption on my part, given the historical examples thrown in, since I've been unable to find much commentary on its creation. Could have been an editor telling him to come up with a story because there was a craze for UFOs at the time. But whatever the case, it's not a bad premise. Despite his associations with extraterrestrials, it's made clear this was unlike any of Bruce's previous encounters, and he's visibly shaken by it. The vaunted Dark Knight detective, able to wallop gang bosses, metahuman madmen, and alien warlords in equal measure, unnerved by big-headed beings with fantastical technology and ominous intentions. He keeps hitting roadblocks, and even when he conquers the drug he was hit with, removes the implant, and beats the evil hippie, he's still not sure what happened, since the implant is gone, implying that it was a psychic manifestation of his from the cosmosis. Which, considering he had fewer doses than the Kook's followers, is probably a kind of backhanded testament to Batsy's overall awesomeness. Sully claimed to have had nothing to do with the abduction, but was he desperately lying? Did he actually do it in conjunction with the chemical gang, expecting Batman's interference and mixing his psychic creations with reality? Were his plans just coincidence and Batman was really taken? It's not at all a bad way of ending a story with the audience questioning what happened. In this case, forcing Bruce to accept he can't always find the answers even to something that happened to him, as well as to not accidentally belittle people who claim to have gone through the same experience. If I had to give an answer, I would say the abduction was an illusion. Not only was Cosmosis created using ingredients the chemical gang stole, but Bats being beamed away had the same starburst effect as other times Sully used his psychic abilities. Though also when he was being hypnotized with that coin. That all being said, I can see how this might be a swing and a miss with some readers. In DC, much like Marvel, aliens are pretty commonly known and do a lot more than just grab randos for mysterious experimentation. So it might read odd to some how Bruce is citing historical accounts, theories, or conspiracies based on and in a real world, and trying to blend it to DCU lore, where spacefolk looking varying degrees of human hatch theatrical plots for conquest. Maybe this would have been easier to accept if this were an Elseworld story where Superman, Hawkman, and other space heroes didn't exist, but that could also make the whole hallucinogens that give you mental powers angle feel all the more ludicrous. Perhaps the drug, with such extreme side effects, is meant to balance the extreme fantasy of Batman's resources, to better leave him in doubt. I find it kind of interesting how Sully believed he'd been scooped up by visitors from the stars, wanting so badly to believe what happened to him and others was real, and created a drug that'd make them believe. Perhaps on some level, it was more about proving himself right than it was getting to any actual truth. Willing to cause harm, but excusing it because he doesn't like violence and his goal is good. In a lot of ways, the story has many smart elements to it, but like fiction is prone to do, it can rely on stuff that's not exactly factual. Not just the hypnosis thing, but the psychosomatic explanation of Bruce's injuries strains credulity as well. It's one thing to feel queasy or achy because you hear a lot about some illness you think you might have. Those could be signals from one's brain making the nervous system all wonky. Creating bruises and lacerations seems far more scientifically dubious as far as I've read. But one could argue that those injuries were more due to cosmosis, either because Kook manifested physical shadow clones of Bruce Lee, solid enough to cause those injuries, or Bruce was so convinced of the attack to the point that his mind and the drug in his system created them, or some combination thereof. The story was largely well-paced, Bats incrementally feeling like he's losing his mind, then gets his footing as the mystery unfolds, and he finds some answers. It kinda speeds up his various tests and procedures, but those don't need a whole lot of expansion. I do feel there could have been more done with the ending. I felt it was a bit rushed and uncertain as to how convinced Bruce was with Sully's claims of not creating the abduction, but perhaps that's in service of making the reader ask what happened. The art is really good, with great expressions showing Batman's worry and bewilderment when so many questions linger that he can't answer. He's plagued by distracting headaches, and all signs seem to point to something many would find preposterous. And the visuals can get trippy or dazzling to great effect. Narration is also used very well, a great accompaniment to the events as they play out without feeling unnecessary or padded. This is not a bad story at all, but perhaps an odd one when juxtaposed to the DCU, trying to blend the real-world unexplained with the fantasy of a guy who tends to always find the answers. But maybe it wasn't so much about Batman quashing an outlandish conspiracy led by a self-medicating nutcase, or actually being abducted, but about our extraordinary hero being made a little more ordinary by being unable to find all the resolution he had hoped for. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.